Okay, so hello and welcome. My name is Katie, and I have Ray Torres here. He is a notary and also a permit runner. So I wanted to invite him on to talk about his experience. So thank you so much.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. Hi, everybody. How are you?
Yeah. So if you could tell me about your business so that way people can find you right away, and
Okay.
then what made you kind of join this industry?
Okay. So, on social media, on Instagram, I am Ray T90. My business is Quality Permit Runners. At the moment, we are going through a rebrand, so our name might be a little bit different in the next coming months. I'm adding a team. I'm building a team and adding more runners to the service. So, but right now, look me up on Instagram, Quality Permit Runners, and you will see what we're all about here in South Florida.
Perfect. Yeah. And so we originally met through social media, which
Mhm.
obviously the power of social media.
You're right.
But yeah, but I wanted to ask a little bit about why you became a notary and then how the permit running kind of came about.
Okay. So yeah, it was very, very interesting because I have a master's degree. I graduated around 2017, and I was looking for something, anything to do. Ironically, I went to I graduated undergrad with a communications degree with the hopes of getting into broadcasting or filmmaking, producing. And that was still kind of a dream in the back of my head. But then part of me was like, all right, broadcasting might be out because I don't want to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning to be in anybody's studio. So I was looking for something else to do. And I didn't know at the time that entrepreneurship, especially being a notary, would reveal itself to me.
Yeah.
And then around 2018, my dad, who was in construction, he came to me one day and he's like, "Come go with me to the building department." And I'm like, "Building department? Why?" And he's just like, "Just come go with me." And usually we get in the car and we start talking about different things. And so I got dressed really quickly and we arrived to the building department and I see all of these people in the lines and they've got plans and paperwork in their hands, and some of them look like they're younger than me or a little bit older than me. And I got curious. I'm like, what are all these people doing here? It's a Tuesday at 10:30. They're not serving breakfast. They're not serving coffee in the back. So what's going on? And I remember asking my dad when I got back in the car, I said, what were all those people doing there? And he said, they work on behalf of the contractor. Contractor can't be in two places at one time. He can't be on the job site and at the building department worrying about that paperwork being processed. So he will hire his nephew, his grandson, his son, his daughter, his best friend, his wife, whoever, to go down and process that paperwork for him. And I said, that sounds interesting. I said, well, do you need a degree? And he's like, no, you just need somebody to show you the ropes. And
Mhm.
I was like, okay. And I was curious. I said, well, how much do they get paid? And he said, well, some of them can get paid, income disclaimer here,
Okay.
but some of them can get paid around 150 to $200 to go process that paperwork.
Mhm.
And I went home and I went, hmm. So I started familiarizing myself. My dad would get roofing jobs where he needed permits done, and I started familiarizing myself with the forms and the process. And then came the pandemic,
Mhm.
2020, where you couldn't go down to the building department and physically drop that paperwork off. So you had to do everything online. And my dad, who is great with construction, but not so great with a computer, asked me to, hey, do you know how to submit this stuff online? Because we really need to put this paperwork in. And they're saying something about you need to do it via PDF. Do you know what a PDF is? And I'm looking at my dad going, really?
Mhm.
Really?
Mhm.
And so he's like, well, can you do it? I was like, sure, give it to me. So of course, there's a learning curve, right? Because with submitting permits online, these building departments have this thing where you have to code the PDFs. You have to name them a certain way to submit them. So notice of commencement has to be NOC dot PDF. And so I'm like, oh, okay, this is a learning curve. of course, you learn by trial and error.
Hmm.
And I submitted it and it was successful. And at the end of it, my dad handed me 200 bucks. And I'm like, what's this for? He's like, well, you submitted the permit. This is your fee. And I went, okay.
Light bulb.
Light bulb went off like, oh, this is something I could do.
Hmm.
And so now, 2023, the contractor that my dad works for hired me full time because he needed an in-house permit runner and an office manager to help him with the permits. You know, an older gentleman who built his business by word of mouth for 45 years.
Hmm.
And suddenly now you're saying everything has to be done online. Well, I don't really have that capacity mentally. So can you help me out? And the rest is history. So that's how I got started with permit running.
That's cool. So now um do that for other companies as well, or like I just kind of wanted to highlight.
So yeah, I have had other contractors come to me, electrical contractors,
Mhm.
even some roofing contractors have come to me, and general contractors as well for my services.
Mhm.
And it's so interesting because when you tell people that you are a permit runner or that you do that specifically, people who don't know about that process go, what's that? Like,
Yeah.
how do you make money doing that? And then when you explain it to them, it's, oh, and even some contractors, when you post on social media and you have a friend or you have an acquaintance that is in that business,
Mhm.
naturally they come to you and they call you. So a lot of my friends and a lot of contractors who are in the business, they know that I'm doing it. So they reach out to me and say, well, hey, I know you're doing permitting. Can you
Mhm.
help me with this process?
Yeah.
So I do currently have 3 or 4 contractors that give me steady work. Some of them, it might come every couple months, because sometimes they do forget, it kind of slips their mind that, oh, I do have this guy over here that
Mhm.
can run this permit for me. Sometimes they have their runners that they go to quite naturally, but if those runners are booked up, then they'll
Mhm.
come to me and say, "Hey, I've got this permit that I need to do. Help me out with this." So yes, I do that for other companies as well.
So then, do you do everything? Like, are you still physically going into the building, or are you primarily working through the computer? Or
I do both.
okay.
Primarily, a lot of my work though is on the computer.
Hmm.
But I do go into the building department, those that still have like physical drop off, that still offer that service.
Hmm.
You can drop the permits off, then I will go drop them off. Sometimes I still have to go downtown to the clerk of courts to record a notice of commencement,
Hmm.
because even though that process is online, you still have to go in. For me, it's still easier just to go in to the clerk of courts, the courthouse, and get them to get the recorder to record it and have it available for upload. So there still is a balance of physical running that needs to
Hmm.
be involved. Anybody that needs a little history lesson, that's where the term runner actually comes from. You're not actually running like a sprint to the building department, but you are picking up documents, going to the homeowner and the contractor to get them physically signed. And then in most cases, you're either submitting them to the building department or you're taking them down to the building department for review and submittal.
Okay. And so there's nothing really, I just wanted to see, there's nothing really, if there are different counties that do take online, you can
Mhm.
do permit running for pretty much any contractor within the state, correct?
Right,
As
right.
long as they'll take the
As
submission through remote,
Yeah,
right?
as long as they take it through remote, or even if there is, depending on where you are
Mm-hmm.
in Florida, or if you're anywhere in a state that there is a big construction boom or there is construction happening, as
Mm-hmm.
long as that contractor is registered with the state and registered with that building department,
Mm-hmm.
their license and their liability insurance is up to date and current. You can run permits for them. They will accept the permit via online
Mm-hmm.
or via in person.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, just make sure that the contractor you're running for has their license up to date. And if they're not, you can register them or help them register.
Mhm.
Usually they will take that process. Some building departments even will say, well, hey, we don't have an online permitting system. We don't have, we don't accept walk-ins, but you can email it to us. So it's pretty much the same
Yeah.
process. You fill out your documents as per usual, you make them into a PDF, and then you will email the documents into the building department. And they will then email you back a permit number saying, hey, your documents have been received. Here's your permit number for your records. Keep up with this. And you definitely want to keep up with that because there's nothing more frustrating than when they answer the phone and then they say, well, what's the permit number? And you're siphoning through your emails and saying, well, wait a minute, I have to go grab it. So I always take a picture with my phone or I
Mhm.
will write that down in a notepad, that number. So if I need to check the status really quick to see if there's any corrections that need to be made or what the review process is like, I can get to that number really quickly and check the status.
So, would it be fair to say that you basically learned, I mean, that's really impressive. So, would it be fair to say that you basically learned how to do this just by learning the software and figured it out?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of had to very,
Yeah.
very quickly
Mhm.
because, and really for it might sound very, very daunting to those of you out there when you are faced with that. So if you're brand new, I would recommend getting a buddy like myself who understands that process because when you're faced with here in South Florida, a lot of it is you're either using the Project Doc software primarily, which is that's the software for uploading documents and tracking documents. And it's very daunting. I had to learn it very fast and very on the fly.
Yeah.
So there were errors that I made, particularly when I was first learning how to upload. I was like, well, it's going to be so easy. And it's like, yeah, nope. That disclaimer that the building department say where it's like permitting made easy. It's
Not.
not easy, right? Like it took me, I will say from 2020 when I really first got into it,
Mhm.
um, I'll say that through trial and error and while working, it took me about a year to get really, really familiar with everything where I could feel comfortable. Now,
Mhm.
some people will get in and learn this
Quick.
in
Yeah.
a couple of weeks, right?
Mhm.
But honestly, and a lot of these building departments now, they have this assumption that people will get in. So they'll give you like these 17, 18-page guides where it's like, hey, learn our permitting process. And you're sitting there and you're like, what? Like, how am I gonna get through all of this?
Yeah.
So it's I don't want to say I learned it overnight, because that's unrealistic, but
Mhm.
it did take me some time. Yeah.
Okay. And then, so let's talk about like a little bit of the light at the end of the tunnel of why you
Mhm.
want to learn this.
Yeah.
And like disclaimer, this means after you've already put in the work and you've
The work,
already,
right? There is work involved.
yeah, yeah.
I want to say that there is work involved.
Mhm.
Um, Learning the process, you're not going to learn everything overnight.
Mhm.
You're not going to learn how to successfully fill out, an entire form, especially if it's a roofing permit. There are supplemental documents that you have to fill out. There are um, hurricane release forms that you actually have to draw out the sketches and you have to pick up the product approvals. So these things take time for
Mhm.
sure.
Mhm.
So after you guys put in the work, here's the light at the end of the tunnel that what you can expect, if you stick with this long enough.
Yeah. Um, and then do you have like a specific, and like I'm not asking for you specifically, but in
Mhm.
general, do you know
Mhm.
what people have been able to make or kind of a general ballpark of like
Yeah.
either per
So
month?
general ballpark, I mean, again, it depends on the contractor
Mhm.
and the deal that you guys, work out. General rule of thumb, it depends on where you see yourself adding the most value.
Mhm.
So if you're intimidated by online permitting and not really wanting to do everything associated with the software and learning all of that, you can just become a courier. And what that is picking up and dropping off the documents, right? You could make anywhere from, disclaimer here, but you can make anywhere from sometimes $100. The minimum you should be charging for courier services
Mhm.
is $100,
Mhm.
whether that be going downtown and recording a notice of commencement or just picking up the documents and dropping off the documents to the job site. The minimum you should be charging for that is $100. But if you do decide to do the full whammy, which is picking up the documents, getting the signatures, scanning the documents to your computer, uploading them. If you really want to do all that, then the general consensus is $150 to $200. Again, this depends on your relationship with the contractor and the deal that you guys work out, because some contractors, they are so in need of these services that a lot of the times they will say, well, hey, I'll pay you 200, or sometimes up to, even up to $300. Again, that depends on the deal that you work out with the contractor. But
Mhm.
general consensus, $100 to $150, depending on where you see yourself adding the most value. Just disclaimer for me and my situation, my one main OG qualifier that gives me a lot of work over the last year. Um, there are some weeks where I can make 500. There are some months where I've made $2,000 a month,
Mhm.
depending on the volume of work that these contractors are giving you. During the slow months, I can say that here in South Florida, and Katie might be able to attest to this, when it's hurricane season and people need roofs and things repaired that need permits, you will see an influx of work. And then there are some months where it's very, very slow. But
Yeah.
even on the slow months, if you can make $200 to $300 a week,
Mhm.
that's still a good week during the slower months of
Mhm.
construction in South Florida. But I will always say that this is one of the best businesses if you're looking to make some side money,
Mhm.
if you're looking to maybe get out of debt or build a nest egg. Notary work and permitting is where it's at. And you don't need a notary. You don't need to be a notary to do permitting. Also, I want to add that in there.
Yeah.
I was a permit runner before I was a notary. I got the notary commission after I got started,
Mhm.
because I did see my dad, who was doing permits before I got started. He would go to this friend that was a notary, and then he would go to this friend to fill out, the other parts of the application. Um,
Mhm.
and then I was like, hmm, can you do one without the other? And he's like, no, I just, I don't have anybody at the current moment that does both
Yeah.
notary and fill out the application. And so I was like, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do kind of both. And
Mhm.
you can be a notary and just get paid to notarize the documents, even,
Mhm.
you don't have, again, that's another caveat that I want to add in there as well,
Mhm.
depending on where you see yourself adding value. If you want to be just the notary notarizing the affidavits for the permit, then you can do that. If
Yeah.
you want to record the notice of commencement, you can just do that. If you want to fill out everything, and that includes notarizing the documents, recording the notice of commencement, uploading the permit, again, but where do you, the individual, see yourself?
Mhm.
Is the question that you have to ask yourself before you get started.
Yeah, because that was like kind of the next thing of where I was
Mhm.
going is that, a good majority of these documents do need notarized, and like for what you said, I only notarize the documents. I don't do anything with
Right, right.
I'm like, what you're talking about is, I'm
And I
like,
know I could see
I
the
don't know
look
how
on
to
your face where you were like, oh my God, like
it does.
there's a lot. Yeah.
What's funny though is like I talk about that with like remote online notarization. I'm like, the software is easy. You can just
Right.
learn it, no big deal. And then you're talking about the permitting, and I'm like, I could never. It's like
You can, and
it's
it's It's so, I a lot of the clients that I work with, they're
Mhm.
particularly older,
Yeah.
right? So they're in their 50s and their 60s, and they're familiar with actually going down to the building department when
Mhm.
that was the only way you could do it, was the
Mhm.
physical running and going down there and waiting for hours. So now when you talk about the online part of it, they're totally like, oh my God, I could
Yeah.
never,
Yeah.
they have that general consensus of like, it's daunting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and like when you think about it, when you're doing the permit running and everything like that,
Mm.
it's important for like what you're doing because then it frees up the contractor's time to be able to do
Yes.
like what
To
his
be able to be in the field and worry about, and worry about other things. Because when you're on a job site and you're managing a crew of 5 to 10 people,
Mhm.
the last thing in the back of your head is, ah, damn, where's the status of this permit? Like,
Yeah.
oh my, like, I have to worry about that too. So if you have someone trustworthy that can handle that process for you,
Yeah.
and for those of you out there watching this, if you really want to do it, add value, right?
Mhm.
Be open if you see a contractor that might be struggling with this, and if you really want to learn how to do it, have a conversation with them. Well, how can I add service to your business? Can I go record this NOC for you? Can I go pick up these documents for you?
Mhm.
Can I, how can I make your day easier? And a lot of the times they will tell you, do you know anything about permitting?
Yeah.
And if you don't, that's okay too. Like, in Katie's case, she just said she notarizes the documents.
Yeah.
Talking about that other software, she'd be like, yeah, nope. She'd probably, we're friends close enough now where if that
I
happened,
would be
she would
like,
probably call me and be like, hey,
mhm. It's like, yeah, that's
you
where
take care of
outsourcing
this.
that's where outsourcing for me comes in. I'm like, this year I'm big on delegation, so then it's
Hmm.
like, and that's the same thing as what contractors should hopefully be doing is that like
Yeah.
when they are really, really busy,
Hmm.
it doesn't really make sense for them to do
To have everything,
to
have
try and do
everything
everything.
out. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think for me, even as a runner, I was talking to one of my other friends that's a permit runner, and just actually yesterday, and he was telling me about one of the guys that he knows that does this like full time. Because
Mhm.
this guy, the guy that works with me, sometimes he records NOCs and he does everything. And so now he works for like 8 different contractors. And I'm like, the amount of running that you do,
Yeah.
I don't like driving that much.
Yeah.
I will drive if I have to, but the amount of running that you physically do, yep. Mm-mm.
Mhm.
And so he was talking to me about a young guy who started off similar to how I started off doing the permitting by himself.
Mhm.
And he got to a point where he hired a team of
Yeah.
now he has one person doing the NOC recording, he has 2 other runners, and then he has one guy that just primarily does the license updating. So it's important for contractors to delegate, but it's also important for runners ourselves to delegate certain parts of the process, because if you get to a point where you have 10 permits that you're tracking, and let's just say each one of them have corrections and things that need to be done, you will start to say to yourself,
This
oh,
is too much. Yeah.
that's too
Well,
much.
I also wanted to like my mind is always working as far as like, the
Yeah.
next step.
Yeah.
I wanted to highlight that this is something that you can scale. So like let's say and I know that you were talking about that that's your next step is
Yes.
scaling and this is something that like in a 9 to 5 usually you would be happy with like maybe a 3 to 5%
Mm-hmm.
each year. If you add on other runners or if you add on other uh what do you call it? Other side hustles within the
Side
business
hustles,
or
services.
offerings within the business, like integrating
Mm-hmm.
fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's something that you can easily scale.
Mm-hmm.
So that way it's not just one facet of a
One
business, like
second. Yeah.
you're
I
one
mean,
one-stop shop. Yeah.
yeah. I recently got into doing red tag violations, as my boss calls them, but they're violations. So what that is if let's just say you have a client that comes to you and says, well, hey, I got caught doing work without a permit, and now the city is gonna find me, right?
Yeah.
So people might have, and I've cleared up three of them right now, and actually I have one on my desk that's
Mhm.
gonna go out in the next couple of days. A client got caught doing work without a permit, and the city fined him per day XYZ amount. And so he calls us up and is like, oh my God, I need a permit. And we're like, okay, well, we're going to put this in for you, but we're not going to tell you that it's going to be an easy process. But
Yeah.
when you add those type of services where
Mhm.
you can go to a client and say, well, hey, if you have any violations that need to be cleared up, I can take care of that for you.
Yeah.
Now, those are, it's always interesting when those come across my desk because they usually all come across with the story and you're just like, you look at some of these clients and you go, why would you put yourself through
Yeah.
that?
In that
You know,
situation.
but
Mhm.
a thing about that is people, they're so intimidated by the permitting process and
Yeah.
sometimes it takes so long to get a permit into the city that a lot of times people are just like, I'm in a rush. I want this done. I don't want to wait. I'm going to DIY, right?
Yeah.
But then you get caught, and
Mhm.
sometimes not even through your own fault,
Yeah.
right? Sometimes someone's driving by,
Mhm.
or you get an unruly neighbor that you think just because it's your house, you can start bamming and, tearing off stuff at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And that neighbor calls up the city and is like, hey, I've got an unruly neighbor doing construction at 5 a.m.
Mhm.
The city comes by, the inspector comes by, and they don't see your permit posted where you can do work.
Yeah.
And now you're like, the city's like, hey, well, here's this fine of two, three, $500 a day until you get that permit in. And so that's when they call us and be like, hey, I need to clear up this violation. Can you
Mhm.
help me out? So that's another service that you can add on.
Mhm.
Um, Still the same process, but you start clearing up violations and you're helping a homeowner really get through a really stressful time. And
Mhm.
so when you can do that and do that successfully and just keep them abreast of everything that's going on.
Mhm.
Even the contractor, right? When the contractor calls and says, well, hey, Katie, what's the status of this permit? Being able to say, well, looking at the portal or looking at the reports and saying, well, hey, this permit's in review, that puts their mind at ease, believe me.
Mhm.
When
Mhm.
you can offer that comfort to let them know, like, I got this, or, and even sometimes when they hear, well, the permit's in review, that that word review kind of stresses them out, but as the runner, there's only so much you can do
Yeah.
once that permit is submitted. It's
Yeah.
hierarchy, that bureaucracy that you have to go through. No one likes it, but it's
Sometimes
part of
I'm like, well, it's the city. What we
it's the
want
city. What can we do,
the
right? So,
city.
but I said all that to say that is another avenue for permitting that
Mhm.
you guys can get into violations and variances and things like that. If
Mhm.
you want, there's in even me doing it now for 3 years, there's stuff that I'm learning still. And I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing about like networking is the more that you talk to people, the more
Hmm.
opportunities that you uncover because
Yeah.
like the same thing. I was talking to someone that does so they're like you need permits for almost anything. It's
Almost anything except for painting
yeah,
and, but pretty much everything else you
yeah.
need a permit for. And you'd be surprised the amount of things that you do need a permit for.
Well, yeah, because I was talking to someone that was installing a sign. I used to work at a
Mhm.
real estate office and he was installing the sign.
Mhm.
He found out that I was a notary and was like, can you, I need this really quick for the office that I was working for. So I was like,
Right.
yeah, of course.
Right.
And then he was like, yeah, this is so nice because I have to do this all the time. And I was like, oh,
Mhm.
really? And so then so but it was interesting. That was kind of before I found out about, being a notary as like
Mhm.
a job.
Right.
And then yeah, so he had to go and do those permits for the signs all of the time.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah,
I mean,
signs, fences, windows, doors, roofing, electrical change outs, like AC, and even specialty events. Um,
mhm,
you need permits for. So, and even now, another avenue. This is a lot of these building departments now they're getting to the point where they're doing virtual inspections.
really.
So there's one county that I
Hmm.
found this out recently. I think it's in Tampa
Hmm.
that because of the influx of permits that they're getting, they're like, well, hey, we're going to start doing virtual inspections. And I had heard about that. And
Yeah.
so pretty much what that is it's you showing up to the job site, taking your phone, and you're on an app and you're walking, the inspector probably has a little window up here, and you're on the site and you're walking them through
So it's almost like field inspection, but for
field inspections pretty much.
permit.
They're getting to that point where it's like
I swear
they're
it.
sorry.
No, no, that go ahead. Sorry.
They're slashing their staff. So a lot of them you'll hear if you go into the building department, a lot of the times they will say, well, due to the influx of emails, we're processing this as in the order it was received. It might take us a couple of days because now they don't have as much staff in the office. A
Hmm.
lot of them are working from home, or there might be 5 inspectors in the office, and each one of those 5 inspectors has like 10 or 20. So what they're doing now, they're trying to cut costs and they're trying to, and this sucks to say, but they're trying to cut out
Humans.
humans.
Yeah.
So but what that opens up is the ability for people like us
Hmm.
that have these type of services and that have that type of knowledge to be able to offer that to our clients.
Hmm.
So in the future, they might come to you and say, well, hey, Katie, can you handle this inspection for me? Or Ray, can you be on, this platform at XYZ to handle this inspection?
Hmm. Interesting.
Um, can you, and in most cases, hey, can you notarize this form for the inspector? So it opens up the possibility for people like notaries and, just general people
Hmm.
to grab some of this knowledge while you can
Yeah.
and be of service.
I really think that the way out, like I've been able to think my way out of, or like learn my way out of a lot of
Right. Right.
less than ideal situations, just because like I talk to other people and then I figure out, it's like, oh,
Hmm.
this is a
Hmm.
thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, but definitely and then okay, so let's reiterate how to find you again
Okay.
for people that want to contact you.
Right. Okay. So my personal Instagram, because sometimes I throw up content on there about my notary journey, is RayT90 on Instagram. And on Instagram also, I'm primarily on Instagram and I'm also on YouTube. Reinaldo Torres is my YouTube channel. I'm talking about all things permitting, all things film production, just a whole multitude of stuff.
Mhm.
But my permitting page on Instagram is Quality Permit Runners. So if you're on Instagram, find me there as well. If you want to know anything about my business, as I said before, we are going through a rebrand process and I am adding members to my team.
Mhm.
So in the future, if Katie and I, which we will be doing collaborations and things in the future,
Yeah.
you guys will be able to find us on our new pages and I will keep you guys updated on all parts of that process.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. And then also, if you are watching this on YouTube, you will be able to find his information in the description box below. And I just wanted to thank you for coming on with me.
Thank you so much. I had so much fun. I had so much fun meeting you guys and talking about this process. And I hope that this information helps you. Like I said, this is one of the I'll say best businesses to get into notary work, just in general. I mean, there's so much stuff that you can do, but
Mhm.
if you're looking to level up your skill set and